Shout out to G-Man Boxing.
Alright people, review of the week time. So, a lot of fights happening this weekend. A lot of fight happening tonight, which I was contemplating whether or not to leave review of the week until tomorrow and film it tomorrow, maybe tomorrow evening upload it, because by then Tank Davis will have already fought. But I'm busy. I know I have a hectic day tomorrow, so I don't know when. By the time I get recorded, it'll probably be tomorrow night at some stage. So I didn't want it to drag it. So we'll try and talk about Tank Davis at some stage tomorrow and his fight with Isaac Cruz. But we'll talk about the fights that happened yesterday, Thursday and Friday, because there's a lot of fights on these last few days. So we got a lot to talk about, a lot of news as well, a little bit of news to talk about, but mainly these fights. So where do we start? Let's do it in order. Let's do it going backwards. So in order of most recent to the earliest. So obviously the card last night, Devin Haney versus Jojo Diaz. People wanting to know my thoughts on that, wanting to know how I feel about the card, how I feel about the fight. Devin Haney did as I expect him to. I thought he would beat Jojo Diaz. I actually thought it'd be a straightforward boxing match, that Devin Haney would just box Jojo Diaz and win a wide UD. Now, he definitely won the fight, don't get me wrong. He won it 8-4 in my opinion. But Jojo Diaz was competitive throughout. Now, Jojo Diaz was stubborn. He was kind of giving up some stubborn resistance, throwing a lot of body shots there. And in the 12th round, for my money, early on in that round, he buzzed. I don't say buzzed, but he definitely rocked Devin Haney. A few people have said that they don't know if Devin Haney has the greatest chin in the world. I would echo them statements personally. I'm not going to turn around and say he's got an Amir Khan chin or anything like that. Certainly not. He would have went down against Linares if he did. But I do wonder. You know, it has to be said, I do wonder. Now, in his fight against Jojo Diaz, he started off very well in that first round. Really bossed that first round. Controlled it at long range. Picked the shots very well. Devin Haney is a very, very good boxer. Make no mistake, but a very good boxer. Good footwork, good fundamentals. Great great shot selection, I should say, he has. You know, he throws great shots. Very good shot selection. I like watching Devin Haney box. You know, the fans didn't. They were booing instantly. I mean, literally, I think it was a minute into the first round and the fans were already booing. That's the way American... And the ironic thing is, a lot of them fans probably would have loved Floyd. And they would have cheered the same kind of thing over the course of 12 rounds. But yet, when it's someone else, they'll boo. It's crazy. But, yeah, Devin Haney, he would try and stand and trade a bit with Jojo Diaz. And I just don't think that when he gets into kind of trading matches and he gets into kind of, you know, standing in front of the guy, he normally tends to come out second best. Like, I'd hate to see him in a shootout with someone like Tank Davis. I really do think he would get his head taken off in that sense. He's more an out-and-out boxer, is Devin Haney, and I think that's what works best for him. Now, in this fight, Jojo Diaz gave some stubborn resistance, as I said, but I always got the impression that that's Devin, I should say, was in control. He was in control of this fight. Maybe he expected it to be a bit easier than he did, and maybe he kind of thought, as I did as well, that because Jojo Diaz isn't a lightweight, let's face facts, he's really a 130 pounder, that it would be a bit easier than it actually was. Saying that, Jojo Diaz was an Olympian. I don't know, he didn't medal. I don't think he medaled anyway, but he certainly was part of London 2012, the US team for that Olympics, a long time ago now. But he had a bit of credential. He'd only ever lost to Gary Russell Jr. That was at 126 for a world title shot. Where's Gary Russell Jr. these days? I mean, he is gone, so. I mean, that guy, how has he not been stripped? Sorry to go off on top, but how the hell has he not been stripped? Like, he's not fought in nearly 2 years and he's not been stripped of his WBC title. What the hell? Or has he? I don't think he has. Anyway, going off topic there. That was a little bit of a mini rant there. But going back onto this. I felt it was an alright performance from Devin Haney. I didn't expect him to stop Jojo Diaz, to be honest with you. I thought he would win it comfortably on points. And yeah, as I said, Diaz was good in parts, definitely. He gave a lot more than I thought he would. I did think the size factor would be a little bit more than it was. But for the most part, I thought it was an okay performance by Devin Haney. Called out Kambosos as everyone else is. I would quite like to see that fight. Be interesting. Very interesting. Kambosos is very good, you know. He's better than I gave him credit for, and he showed me that against Teofimo. And I really do. I will be reluctant to pick against him moving forward, because he really is a good. And I remember watching the Selby fight back the day after, and I was like, no, he actually. I wasn't giving him enough credit. He is a good little fighter. I'm not gonna say he's the best. No, I don't know. I still think Lomachenko on his day could probably beat them all, but him against Devin Haney, that's a good fight. It's a very good fight. The fight I'd love to see genuinely would be Tank Davis versus Devin Haney. I'd like that fight. I think that fight stylistically would be very fun to watch. In fact, that fight would be brilliant. I'd love to see Tank Davis versus Devin Haney. Obviously, Montana Love was on that card, or Montana Love, if I'm pronouncing it right. He's a fun little character to watch. He really is. He's fun to watch. He got a win on the undercard. We'll talk about the BT Sport card now. Now, before I talk about the main event, there was a couple of fights on the undercard. Obviously, Sam Noakes getting a good win. He's been looking quite good at 135 pounds. It has to be said. Sam Noakes, he's been getting a lot of these guys out of there. Been quite impressive what I'm seeing from Sam Noakes. Dennis McCann, there was a lot of criticism about Dennis McCann that he couldn't get rid of the guy. Now I'll just box wreck it here, because I did actually see that fight with Dennis McCann, and I thought he looked okay. I thought that he said that he hurt his knuckle, I think, in the second round, which did, kind of offset him a bit, but he won every round. The guy, he'd lost actually. Before this fight, he'd lost his last 4, 2 decisions, 2 stoppages, one in the first round. Now that's not a good sign. Now that was by a light flyweight, is it? Yeah. Wow. He got knocked out in a round by a light flyweight. Okay. This was at 126 pounds. Jesus, that is actually something to raise an eyebrow. I wasn't aware of that. Now I knew he was stopped, but I wasn't aware by a light flyweight. Although that fight was fought at bantamweight, the guy you've listed here is a light flyweight, and he's campaigned at light flyweight. Agustin Mario Guta. Wow, I didn't know that. But yeah, he was able to survive the rounds with Dennis McCann. Dennis McCann did what he needed to do. Also on that card, we had a guy called George Fox. George Fox was an up-and-coming heavyweight. We can call him a prospect. He looked very fleshy in this fight, extremely fleshy. He was 276 pounds, and he took an L against Kamil Sakalowski, 79-75. Now, I didn't see it live, but on Twitter there was a lot of stick at Richie Woodhall, because apparently he was commentating on that fight, and he was giving Kamil Sakalowski no credit where everyone else was saying he's bossing this fight. Sakalowski, we've seen him get robbed aplenty. I mean, he's 23 losses, Kamil Sakalowski. Realistically, a lot of them losses shouldn't be losses, because he's been robbed. I've seen him robbed a few times. I've seen him robbed. He fought a prize fighter tournament a few years ago. For my money, he won his first round fight. He definitely got unlucky against Adelaide. He definitely beat Lucas Brown, won every round in that fight, and I'm sure, in fact I'm positive there's been other fights there on his resume, and that's just 3 fights I've named you. I'm sure there's probably about 3 or 4 more fights, maybe even more, where he should have got the decision and didn't. That's Kamil Sakalowski, very good fighter. Well, he's a tough, good journeyman who comes to win. You do wonder about Kamil Sakalowski if he had the proper backing when he turned pro first. If he had like an MTK behind him. I'm not saying he'd win a world title or anything like that, but I wonder how far he could have went as opposed to the journeyman route, because he's one of them journeymen who come to fight, and as this George Fox kid found out, if you've any holes in your armour, someone like Kamil Sakalowski will exploit them. Oh my god, he will. Someone like Sakalowski, he'll exploit them. There was a guy on this card, now I didn't see his fight, but just he has one of the greatest names you'll ever hear. Wait in this. Sonny Liston Ali. I mean, just what a name. Sonny Liston Ali. Just that's a name for you, isn't it? That's a name. He won a points decision. I didn't see it, but the name is just something else. It just jumps out at you. You can tell his dad's a boxing fan, definitely. You can tell. Well, Sonny Liston Ali. Now, the fight that everyone was talking about, apart from the main event, was this fight right here. Cesar versus Bradley Skeete. Now, Bradley Skeete, I picked him to lose this fight. I think I picked him to lose by stoppage early, because Skeete's been away from the ring. He was stopped by Leharaga, and then in his comeback fight he was stopped by some journeyman in Brentwood. That was I think the end of 2018 or the end of 2019. It was one or the other. It might have been the end of 2018. And I thought Bradley Skeete seen better days. Training with Dominic Ingle now and looked very good in this fight. But in the 8th round, he went down and was hit several times while down. Now, personally, I felt that did warrant the disqualification because Bradley Skeete, it didn't look like he was in any state to continue. It looked like his legs weren't underneath him after that, and the referee only took a point from his opponent there. For me, that did warrant the disqualification. I think that if the opponent, as in Bradley Skeete, is unable to, and he really was unable to continue, and it stems from those shots while he was down, I think because think of it like this: had the referee had stopped it then and there and awarded the DQ, Bradley Skeete would have won this fight. The referee could have given Bradley Skeete 5 minutes, and his legs still weren't underneath him. He was never right after that. So for me, that was what lost Bradley Skeete this fight, because Bradley Skeete's just legs weren't underneath him, even though they were illegal shots. His legs were gone from that point. So what more could he have done? So for me, there's talk about them getting that investigated by the British Boxing Board of Control. I mean, what's the guy's name who runs the British, who's like the thing for the British Boxing Board of Control? Something Smith, isn't it? What's his name? I forget the guy's name, but that guy is an absolute thumbs down emoji. What's his name? The guy, that representative from the Board of Control. What was it? He always says things. Oh, the fans don't know anything. They can't score. You know that guy. He's a real piece of work. He probably won't do anything. But yeah, Bradley Skeete can feel very hard done by in that fight. Main event: Lyndon Arthur, Anthony Yarde. Boy, I didn't see that coming. I picked Yarde to win. Yes, I did, but I didn't see him being as dominant as that. That really caught me off guard. And big up to Anthony Yarde. I wonder if having a full attendance there, having the fans, just brought that little bit something out of Anthony Yarde, because we have seen certain fighters say they really struggle in that environment where it's behind closed doors and there's no fans. Anthony Yarde, I get the impression that I'm not going to say that was the only thing that helped him win, of course not. The fact of the matter is he was just a much better fighter on the night. I think if that had been behind closed doors, he still would have won. But I definitely think having the fans there would have helped him find that extra level. It's going to be interesting to see what he does now, because in other news this week, Callum Johnson, it's official, he's going to fight Joe Smith Jr. on January 15th. I'm not going to put a penny on him winning, but I know if he did, Frank Warren would be absolutely ecstatic, and he'd be trying to make Anthony Yarde versus Callum Johnson like that. He would be absolutely elated with himself. Again, Callum Johnson, I like Callum Johnson, he's fun to watch, but he's looked pretty poor in his last 2 fights. I think he's seen better days at this stage, and I wouldn't put a penny on Joe Smith Jr. losing that fight. I think Joe Smith Jr. is going to knock Callum Johnson out pretty early and pretty swiftly. I really, really do. You might say Joe Smith shouldn't be champion, and I definitely think Vlasov should be champion, but and he's not fighting Boazzi now. But I think that someone like that, like Callum Johnson, can box a bit, but lately he's been standing and trading a lot more. Someone like that, Joe Smith Jr. is not going to have to go looking for him. And Joe Smith Jr., I just think he's just too big, too strong, too fresh, hits too hard, and I think he's going to knock Callum Johnson out. So that's the card last night. We got to talk about the 2 cards that happened on Friday. Obviously, the card in Spain, you had Kerman Leharaga knocking out Jack Flatley. I mean, that was a brutal knockout, as I said. Knockout that I don't feel needed to happen, but brutal knockout. It was a good fight. Leharaga is so fun to watch. Like, he is so fun to watch. But apparently he's got a good heart underneath it all, because apparently because that was a brutal knockout. If you're not seeing it, Flatley was in a bad way. Apparently he waited for him in the hospital and then took him and his team for pizza. So big up to him. A lot of fighters wouldn't do that. A lot of fighters would have just gone their own way and doing whatever. So big up to him for that. Buying your opponent pizza and waiting for him in fair play. Kerman Leharaga is fun to watch. He's definitely value for money. I don't think I've ever seen him in a boring fight. I don't think a boring fight is in his MO. And the way the fans love him over there in Spain and Bilbao. Leharaga is one to watch. Who will he fight next? I don't know. Troy Williams possibly. As I said, I'll probably pick Troy Williamson to win that fight. I think Leharaga's leaky defense and Williamson's power will tell the story. Saying that, Leharaga hits very hard. I'm sure he could definitely, in fact, he definitely could hurt Troy Williamson. So I think that would be an excellent fight for a European title. I'd love to see it. I really would. I'd love to see that fight. On the undercard, Campbell Hatton had a fight. Many of you, some might not have known that. He got his first knockout. I didn't see it at the time, but everyone on Twitter was saying that he looked a lot better. And I looked at little snippets of it. Well, it was hard to look any worse than the last fight, it has to be said. He still looks horrendous, but yes, he didn't look as bad as the last fight, it had to be said. They got some Hungarian journeyman in there. A lot of the Hungarian journeymen are not too durable, it has to be said. They get them on a lot of shows. Well, they used to get them on a lot of shows over here in Ireland when they used to have shows over here. And yeah, they were journeymen. Like, they were journeymen that I would know of who would have who would literally be 20-0 if they fought some of these guys over there in Hungary. They literally would. With 20 knockouts as well. But Campbell Hatton on this low-key show, this is what the kid needs. I don't see... Look, you might think I sound terrible for saying this. I see the kid going nowhere in boxing. Right? I don't. But if you want to give him the best chance of at least improving, don't put him on massive shows in big arenas and big stadiums. Put him out on cards like this. Because it takes a lot of the pressure off him. I'd say, would any of the Bilbao fans even know who he was? Would there be many there? No, he needs that. That's what he needs. Bring him up on the small hall scene. I know what they're trying to do with him, but you're putting a 20-year-old kid under immense pressure, putting him on them big cards. And I wonder if he'd fought that last guy, whatever his name was, Martinez. If he'd fought him in a setting like this, would the fight have gone differently? Would he have looked a bit better? Would he have been a bit more comfy, as opposed to being in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? It's hard to say. Potentially he could have been. Potentially this is what Campbell Hatton needs, and I think if Eddie Hearn persists with doing this, it's the right thing to do. It's not like taking someone who has had an extensive amateur career, who's boxed all around the world, who's boxed in 4 corners of the globe, 300 amateur, etc. It's not like that. You're talking about someone who'd never had an amateur background. Yes, he's had amateur fights, but very few, at a very low level. I don't even think we know what his record was in the amateurs. Looks extremely crude and raw as a pro. Why are you putting an added amount of pressure by having him on these big pay-per-view shows in front of God knows how many people? Just keep him on the small hall scene for now until we see an improvement, and maybe then gradually bring him up onto maybe some of the lesser known cards. Like, for example, a good fight to have him on, or another good card, if you have another card like what we have with Chantel Cameron, remember that card like that, maybe where not many eyes are going to be on it, but it's kind of big enough, maybe in a few fights time, something like that. That's what I would say to do. Now, there was an MTK show on IFL, and Isaac Lowe fought a guy called Lopez, and Isaac Lowe lost. He got stopped in the 7th round, and people were asking my opinion on it. What was my thoughts on Lowe getting beat? And my thoughts are, I'm amazed it took this long for Isaac Lowe to get beat, because I've watched him for years, never remotely impressed me. 3 draws on his resume. I think one was caused by a headbutt in a fight that he was losing, but that was early on, I think. I forget who it was, but Isaac Lowe's never impressed me. Never ever impressed me. And I said the minute they step him up even the slightest, he's going to lose. He was down from the first punch in this fight, and that guy Lopez definitely had punching power, and Isaac Lowe was really, by the 7th round, I think the will had been beaten out of him. Like, he disputed the referee stopping the fight, but he was never going to win that fight. He was down 3 times, every time, and his defense was very leaky. So my thoughts on Isaac Lowe losing were, I'm surprised it took this long, because I never rated Isaac Lowe. Apparently this was an eliminator, or final eliminator, for a crack Kiko Martinez's title. That'd be an interesting fight, that Lopez guy versus Martinez, be interesting. And the IBF are very stickly with their mandatory, so they probably would call that. So that was what happened in that fight. As I said, wasn't surprised that Isaac Lowe lost. I picked him to lose. I'm just surprised it took him this long. Nothing against the guy, but he's never remotely impressed me in terms of his skill set. This is a fight here that everyone was asking me about on Friday, and I'm going to be frank, I completely forgot this card was on. Had I known, I might have, even though I was working on Friday, I might have woke up early to watch it, because I like watching Michael Hunter fight. And I completely forgot, and Friday was a really hectic day for me, and I just didn't have time. I did watch the fight, but I just didn't have time to do a review on it. Michael Hunter, Jerry Forrest, a rematch of Michael Hunter's 8th professional fight in which he won every round against Jerry Forrest. Jerry Forrest 26-4-1. He's a lot better than that suggests. You know, he's been in there with Takam. He lost that fight legitimately. There was two fights. I know he fought Franklin and he lost it, but he really shouldn't have. Yeah, he lost. He drew that Zilli Zhang fight. He should have won that fight too, truth be told. Who was the guy who stopped him? Washington stopped him. Gerald Washington, which is surprising because Washington doesn't normally stop guys. He's not the biggest puncher in the world. But yeah, Forrest is a better fighter than that record suggests. And Michael Hunter was 222 pounds. Now, I think he's been heavier in his career than 222. But aesthetically, Hunter looked very poor. In fact, has he been heavier? Yeah, he's been heavier. Like for Povetkin, he was 226. For that guy, Sean Lockery, he was 224. He was 5 pounds heavier than he was against Mike Wilson. And Sergey Kuzmin 221. Now, although Hunter, as I said, he's weighed heavier than that, aesthetically he looked very poor. Very, very poor in there from aesthetic point of view. And Hunter, a heavyweight, Hunter still could do cruiserweight. I think that we all know he still could. I think if you took the fat away and you added lean muscle, he'd comfortably be able to make cruiserweight. He wants to fight a heavyweight. I can't begrudge him that. He even stated that several years ago when he was fighting, you know, the guys like Ustinov, that he wanted to fight heavyweight to be a heavyweight. He could still do cruiserweight, but he wanted to fight a heavyweight, which is a shame because Hunter a cruiserweight, that guy is a problem. Now he's a problem at heavyweight too. I still think he can be, but a cruiserweight, damn, Michael Hunter is, damn, that man, he would cause some serious problems down there. Serious problems for those guys. Damn. Now in this fight he looked terrible. It was competitive the first few rounds, and you know it was kind of nip and tuck, but Hunter really faded down the stretch. I was surprised. And Hunter normally is actually quite good. You know, I know he's a fast starter as Michael Hunter, but even against Povetkin he came on quite good late. Boy, he looked poor in this fight. Oh boy. He was getting hit consistently with left hands by Jerry Forrest. His defense he looked lethargic as hell in there. He really should be. He was lucky to get away with the draw. That's what I will say. He was very lucky to get away with the draw in this fight. He was a lucky boy. I haven't seen Hunter look this bad, and I can't remember the last time I seen Hunter look this bad. Really surprised me, because I'm used to seeing Michael Hunter with a lot more speed, look a lot more fluid, look a lot more sharp. He looked terrible in this fight. I don't know whether maybe the fact that he beat Jerry Forrest previously, straightforward enough, and maybe he just felt, okay, well, I beat this guy in my 8 pro fight. He's not improved than I have. Obviously, Michael Hunter has improved, but I don't think he anticipated how much Jerry Forrest had. Because I was really, I watched this fight on my lunch break, and by the end I was like, oh boy, Michael, you were lucky to get to get the draw. So I thought you lost this fight. I was very surprised. I was like, lucky boy. Lucky boy to get the draw in this fight. On the undercard we had Cassius Haney versus George Arias. That's not the journeyman George Arias, that's an up and come. Well, there was a lot said about George Arias on the up and come about 6 years ago when he was fighting. I think he was promoted by Top Rank at the time, because he was a short heavyweight. He's about 6 foot tall. He's got a lot of energy, has George Arias. Not a big puncher, but he really, I don't want to say faded into obscurity, because he never lost. He just kind of seemed to disappear, but was still racking up wins, but wasn't really getting the guys out of there. He wasn't putting in jaw-dropping performances. Now in this fight it wasn't exactly a jaw-dropping performance. It was a split decision. I thought Arias just nicked it, to be fair, but yeah, against Cassius Haney, it was, how do I describe it? It was one of them kind of fights, you know. I mean, I thought Arias just did nick it, but I can't. At one stage when Arias came out first, I was thinking a 6 foot tall, light enough heavyweight who's, you know, got tremendous energy, and he was getting a few knockouts at the time, and I thought he could have done something. I don't know what he can. I wouldn't pick Michael Hunter. A good Michael Hunter on his day, I'd pick him over George Arias personally. Also on this undercard, we had Lippy Morrison versus a guy called Mike Belgrin. Now, Lippy Morrison is the son of Tommy the Duke Morrison. Lippy Morrison got knocked out in the first round, and a bit like Isaac Lowe, how this didn't happen sooner, how he was able to get to 18-0 was beyond me. Have you ever seen Lippy Morrison fight? Even in the fights he wins. He fought on the undercard. I think it was on the undercard of Smith versus Vlasov. A guy called Mike Bungner. Now, I'd seen him fight before. He's an Australian heavyweight. He's a journeyman, out-and-out journeyman. And he was lighting Morrison up like a Christmas tree. Dropped him in the first round, if memory serves me correctly, but I don't think it was called a knockdown. And Morrison should thank his lucky stars that Bugner injured his ankle, because he was getting lit up like a Christmas tree. I don't know how he managed it. He's looked absolutely, everyone would say he looked horrific. Horrendous. And he got knocked out in the first round. I seen it. He was getting, his defense is non-existent. He was getting hit from early on, and 2 minutes and 40 seconds into the first round he got knocked out. Not surprising at all, to say the least. Lippy Morrison has just, he's never remotely impressed me. So that's the fights over the weekend. Let's have a look-see and have an old chat about some of the news that we have. Frank Warren has said that Bob Arum, here's an interesting one. Frank Warren has said that he and Bob Arum have agreed that Anthony Yarde will challenge the winner. Okay, so the winner of Callum Johnson, I wasn't aware of this, the winner of Callum Johnson versus Anthony Yarde, or versus Joe Smith Jr. will definitely face Anthony Yarde. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Caleb Plant has told reporters he would welcome a fight with David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo when he recovers from injury. I would keep Caleb Plant away from David Benavidez. Charlo be interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing. That's a good fight, him against Charlo. I would pick David Benavidez over him though. Bob Arum, now this is what I want to talk about. Bob Arum has revealed that Saudi Arabia want to stage Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk in March. Hence the initial talks about possible step-aside money. Now, if the Saudis are putting the money up, oh boy, AJ, because AJ gave that IFL interview where he said that basically, he kind of alluded to the fact that if the right amount was offered, he'd be willing to step aside. Now, if we're talking about the Saudis, I mean, they would offer him a serious amount. Maybe he would consider it then. And even Eddie Hearn has said that in initial conversations about the possibility of step aside for Anthony Joshua, Hearn said he wants to fight Usyk, but if there's a route and offer that will make sense, we'll see. Again, which is essentially them hinting at the fact that they could potentially be looking at going down the step aside route. You know, wouldn't, if they would have to offer him a serious amount. Like, it wouldn't be like a case of like 4 or 5 mil. You'd be expecting it to be a lot higher than that. But it's interesting. Like, my primary focus is to see Undisputed. I want to see Undisputed champion, and I would love to see Fury versus Usyk. I think it's a great fight. So watch this space. I get the feeling we're going to be having a roller coaster ride in boxing over the next few months with regards Undisputed at heavyweight. I reckon it's going to be he say, she say, she say, he say, stuff like that. Fraser Clark signed a long time deal with Boxer. He's actually managed by Anthony Joshua's managerial company as well. So Fraser Clark, the heavyweight, I've seen Fraser Clark a few times. He's looked alright. I remember he was stopped by Joe Joyce way back in 2014, if memory serves me correct, in the amateurs. But Fraser Clark going in with Boxer. It's another name that they can add. They have a very small stable, so the more fighters they can get, the better. It helps grow their stable, because at the minute now they don't have that many, but he'll be out on some of them shows, which is, I think that's a good thing. It's a good little signing for, Boxer to get a nice heavyweight like that in. What else do we have? Triple G versus Murata is postponed. Yes, I did see that. I look, people know my stance on the whole situation. I'm not going to go into it. But yeah, postponed. Of course it is. What else do we have in the crazy world that is boxing? I think the fights were the kind of things that mainly kind of was what I talked about the most. Hrgovic, I saw Hrgovic had another run out against a fairly overmatched opponent, that has to be said. You know what, right? Michael Hunter, just going back to him, is it worth it? Is it worth the money you're getting fighting on Triller when he could be in God knows what position now? I know it was a lot less. I think they didn't, when Michael Hunter was meant to fight Hrgovic, they were only looking at a couple of $100,000. I guarantee he's making more money on Triller now fighting these guys, but is it worth it knowing that you're kind of stagnating but saying that at the same time, Hrgovic has been stagnating as well. With Hrgovic, it's really annoying because how can he fight anyone, or how can he get a crack at a world champion when no one was willing to fight him for a, what's the word, mandatory shot, But Hrgovic, I like Filip Hrgovic. I think he's a good fighter, but he's just, I think that the more he fights these kind of overmatched guys, the worse it's going to be for him moving forward, because I think he's going to start to pick up bad habits, and I think he could be one of them fighters who, he meets the level of the opponent too much, that when he does finally meet someone who is a lot better, he might be stuck almost in that mentality of, I'm beating up these overmatched guys, I don't need to be at my best. And then maybe when he meets someone with a pulse, it might kind of, rear its ugly head, the kind of the opponents he's been in there with. I hope that's not the case, because I do like watching Filip Hrgovic. I do. Got Carlos Takam versus Tony Yoka, which was recently announced. That's going to happen in January at some stage over there in France. Good little fight. Him against Yoka would be a great little scrap. Filip Hrgovic versus Tony Yoka. I'd like that fight. I think that would be a great little scrap. Tony Yoka versus Filip Hrgovic. I think that would be very good. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see that in 2022. I hope the heavyweight division, we get more of these fights in 2022. Because once the heavyweight division is popping, and once we get these prospects fighting, I think the rest of the boxing is going to improve as well. That's kind of really it for review of the week. There's not really much else there. I was hoping to talk more about Tank Davis, but obviously his fight's not on until the wee hours of the morning, and I just won't have time to do review of the week late tomorrow, because these take a long time to record and then edit, so that's a bit of a pain. So I think we're cutting it here. I think I talked about pretty much most of what I needed to. It was a week of not much news, but a lot of fights. A lot of fights, which was good, and we've got more fights this weekend. I believe we have the Conor Ben Algieri card, Kay Taylor. We should have had Eubank Williams. Unfortunately, we're not getting that till January. We've Lomachenko, I think, this week against Comey. He's going to be a good little scrap. So yeah, that's pretty much it. For now, lads and lassies, I'll leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you could, smash the like button. It does help your boy out. Hit the old notification bell as well. If you could do that as well. We're getting there. We're less than 150 subs away from 6k. Can we do it by Christmas? I think we can. In fact, we definitely can. I've hit 200 subs in a month loads of times. We can do that. Can we do it? Let's try. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.